haven't really responded in a positive manner. And other, by default, the incident is more positive in nature. So you will definitely feel more comfortable talking about good things about you than about the bad things or the negative things. But one tip and trick that I always use is, even if I'm talking about my shortcomings, even if I'm talking about my weaknesses, a normal question that, okay, talk to me about your strengths and weaknesses. So whenever I talk about weaknesses or negative parts about myself, I always leave the answer with an extra line, an added line of what I am doing to make it better. What are the things that I'm working on to make that situation better in future for myself? So this line is more powerful and it turns a negative situation into a positive one for us. So if you want to turn those negative, those, failure incidents and low moments in your life into a positive segment, try to add a line on talking about, okay, hey, I have not been a good public speaker, but now I've joined this Toastmasters club in my city and I go there regularly and that has given me a boost. So someone who is interviewing, he would understand that, okay, at least the person is aware about his negative and shortcomings and he's taking a step to do something better. And that gives him a lot more faith in you and trust in you that, okay, you are a person who's gonna course correct the negative things, course correct the bad things that have happened to you, because we all are very prone to make mistakes. So the idea is not to make no mistakes. The idea is to, if you make a mistake, accept that, review that, and ensure you do not repeat it. So that's how these behavior rounds technically are. So I'll wait 2 minutes or like let's say 30 seconds for any questions on behavioral interviews before we deep dive and talk about the technical rounds. In behavior interviews, can we put situation of companies pressure about work and timeline of finished work? One thing that I always seen sometime is that uh, a lot of people somehow fall into a trap of talking. You know the shortcomings that you have faced in your past company, the shortcomings you have faced with your past manager, with your past team. I would personally recommend that refrain on showing any of those uh, segments into negative light. However, you can obviously talk about, the hard deadlines, the client deliverables, but with a positive intent. You cannot say that, hey, I was choked with work because, I was giving 3 projects at a point of time and all of them came up with similar kind of deadlines. I mean, that's not a fair answer. Maybe you can say that, hey, I could not prioritize things better and all of the client deliverables just, fell on table at once. However, I tried to ensure that I prioritize the important ones before I prioritize the other ones. Or maybe I divided the team with my divide the work within my team, or I kind of asked for an extension sometime, like if your manager kind of agrees to that, and all your managers just offered some help to wind up the work quickly. I mean, obviously end on a positive note, do not end something on a negative note. That doesn't really work well. I mean, I have not seen that working well in the past, at least. How can I prepare myself for the behavioral round? One good way of preparing yourself for the behavioral round is to think about scenarios that you have genuinely faced in the past. At least be prepared with those kinds of answers and those kinds of incidents that you have faced in the past. It is more to do with your thought process than to uh, do with your genuinely preparation, like we do normally for a technical round. And the reason I say this is because this is like very, very, blank space to talk about. But just preparing yourself for the kind of answers that you might give, reminiscing your old incidents, old experiences, thinking more in terms of like, okay, where did I go wrong? What things I've done better? or are there any more skills that I want to showcase in my behavior round per se? So you prepare yourself in those thought processes so that whenever you are faced a question or a scenario in actual interview round, you are more prepared. You have more pointers to think about. You have more pointers to talk about, and you're more confident in terms of, okay, I know this and I have got this. However, sometimes a lot of people are also faced with the kind of problem that they have never faced in past. In that case, my response usually remains that, hey, be very if you think a person equivalent to your work profile or equivalent to the experience that you have might have faced those kind of situations, then try and answer those situations. Create a scenario or think yourself in a scenario. For example, you what would you have done in case you have been facing that kind of situation, then go ahead, think through, put yourself into his or her shoes. Think about that particular situation. Think about how would you have acted. Think about what outcome you would have been satisfied upon, and frame that answer and give it back to the interviewer. However, if you think that it is very unlikely that you would face that kind of situation within your past work profile or within your peers or all of that, you may choose to skip a question. Instead of answering anything very incorrectly or with giving less thought, it's better to skip and pass the question, because understand that behavioral rounds are more to judge what kind of person you are, what kind of skills you bring on table. So I do not want to create a bad image or an incorrect image which I myself might not align to. So a very polite answer could be that, hey, I don't think I face this kind of any situation, and can't really imagine the situation in my head in terms of how would I've acted. Maybe in case I genuinely see and face this kind of situation, I would be in a better place to think about that. So at least it is a reassurance to the interviewer that, okay, you are being very honest that you have never faced this kind of situation. Usually, I think in 80 to 90% of cases, the interviewer still goes ahead and says, that, okay, take a wild guess. In that case, what you obviously get, once you have obviously got that reassurance, even if you answer that question a bit incorrectly or a bit, naively, he would not going to blame you or sue you for this. However, be very humble and very, very gentle when you answer these kinds of questions. Yeah, when you help and collaborate like in a positive manner with your team member and leave yourself or your team member with more learnings, it does put a positive impression on the interviewer. Yeah. Okay. A very common question that I always keep facing is that how to answer and convey to HR that in case HR asks, why are you leaving your existing company? And the answer is money. If your answer is money, if your answer is bad boss, if your answer is bad company, if your answer is bad culture, if your answer is too much work pressure, all of these answers technically are incorrect. So a right way to approach this kind of question in terms of, okay, why are you leaving an existing company? I would say turn this question around and frame in sense of, okay, you are looking for growth, you are looking for any, exclusive kind of strength and skills that you want to build, which you think the current or the new company that you're applying for will fulfill. Go through the company's profile, read about their vision, read about their objectives, about their mission, the kind of projects they are doing to get more insight about what the company is really looking for and align yourself with that. So that is one way of turning around this question. Second turning at point can be, hey, I'm looking for something new. I'm looking to explore more around the market, and this is what I bring on table. And I think this would be a better place for me to start and learn and grow further. And hence, I'm here to interview. I hope that answered your question. Okay, moving ahead and talking about a bit more about technical interviews. Like I said, that they are more, very focused interviews to test you. Test your aptitude, test your skills, test the level of knowledge that you have come up with. Also, keep in mind, right? Like I was also talking about that in the resume section, and do not mention something that you have not worked upon. Do not mention something that you have never seen in the past. So if and that's why it could be very difficult for you to crack technical interviews if your resume talks about something which you have never worked upon. In that case, if someone asks you a question around that and you're not prepared for that, that's like a roadblock. Hey, and that also like break the trust of the person who's interviewing, because like you've talked about that so highlightly and nicely in your resume, but you cannot substantiate. So whatever you write in your resume particularly has to be substantiated by your performance that you give in your technical interviews. The idea is to match the personality with the actual one in your technical interviews, and if you cannot, that's clearly a very negative deal breaker for you, because if those two kinds of personalities are not aligning anyhow, very high chances that you will never get another feedback call or an interview call from the company that you're wishing for. So always be prepared in terms of whatever you write in your work profile, whatever you write in your project section. Be very clear of what are you writing, why are you writing, and you know the background about that. If you're talking about any particular industry there, be very aware of what all pointers you need to know about the industry. Talk about the KPIs, recent trends, recent movements, recent new industry insights. Be very well prepared with all of these basic, cursory research whenever you sit for in technical interviews. So, usually technical interviews, like apart from the coding test, apart from the aptitude test, are a lot based on scenarios, numbers, cases, sometimes very small but real-time business cases that a person is facing a problem with, and you have to solve those kinds of a thing. Usually, we all take some time to, process the information that we are provided within that interview room. However, I always recommend that do not keep the interviewer waiting for your answer, or do not solve everything in your mind and come back with an answer. And usually, more often than not, especially in the consulting frameworks or in the marketing domain specific interviews, I've seen that the person is not really looking for the answer. He is looking for the approach. He is looking for your methodology. He's looking for your, thought process and problem solving skills. Okay, what are you thinking? So here are like some 6, 7 points which always ensure that we are in line with the expectation of a normal technical interview question. Keep like do not just start using the data or the information that you are provided by the interviewer. First of all, take a step back, think that whatever the problem that he's asking and what are the problem that he's stating, is he giving you sufficient data points? If yes, is the data point sufficiently clarified? Like, do you think that you have assumed something while talking and taking notes of the data points which does not align well in your later stage of your answer? So keep always ask the clarifying questions from your interviewer. Ensure that you understand the problem correctly. Ensure you have all of the required data in the right place before you kind of sit down and solve it. Second is communicate your thought process. Like talk to the interviewer while you're solving that particular problem. In that case, sometimes what works well for us in that case is sometimes it's like you do not have time or you need more time. So when you're talking to the interviewer, you're keeping him engaged. So he sometimes lose track of the amount of time or the number of minutes that you have used and consumed to kind of come up with a solution. So communicate your ideas. Obviously, seek that approval that, hey, I am thinking of this, I am thinking on these lines. What do you think about that? Do you think it is a fair thing to do? Do you think, I'm missing out something? Hope that is in line with what you are thinking, or what are you in line of your answer that you have in your mind, in case you're taking any assumptions around some data, around some practice of the industry, around some fact, go back, recheck with the interviewer that, hey, I am assuming this to be this. Do you think it's a fair assumption to make? Do you think I should make some changes? And all of that. Obviously, communicate what are you thinking, and don't just say that, okay, this is a fact, this is a well-known fact. Sometimes always give example that, hey, this is something I've seen normally, because you state your example, state your reason that why do you think this is equivalent of fact and this is not just an assumption. Then next step is come down and break down the problems. Break down the major problem into sub-segments and talk that, okay, hey, I can solve this for you. I cannot solve this because this is more qualitative in nature. This is something is controllable. This is something is non-controllable. So break down the problem. Ensure that you have all of your pieces of like just like a jigsaw and a crossword puzzle. You have all your pieces while you are, joining them with each other. Write very clean solution, be like if you're preparing a diagram, if you're preparing a flow chart, be very clear, don't make it very messy, so that tomorrow and some moments later, if you want to go back and rework, you do not forget where did you start, you do not forget what steps you did. So be very clean in terms of the code you write, in terms of the framework that you build while answering the question. Then obviously ensure that you have taken into consideration all of the scenarios that surrounds the same problem. Sometimes, a lot of times, we are so positive in our nature that we think only the positive solutions and forget to talk about the negative side testing. We do not talk about the negative testing of the problem that we are solving, and sometimes it's very easy for us to forget and leave the edge cases. So ensure that you incorporate almost maximum amount of scenarios that you can think of. In case you think that you are not able to solve or you're not able to respond to any of the edge cases that may occur in future in real time business, at least inform the interviewer that, hey, I am thinking that this scenario is also possible, but since the probability is very low or it is not feasible, I may not want to take into consideration. Instead, sometimes you can just pick it as a question to the interviewer that, do you think I should consider these kinds of scenarios as well while I'm solving the problem? So that at least he knows the thought process that you are not just talking about one straight line, you are thinking more in depth, you're thinking more broadly on the problem than you should have. And finally, collaborate with your interviewer. The idea of having a very clean, well written case round, well written guest estimate, well written question in technical is that the interviewer at the end should feel happy about your approach, about your thought process. He should at least be agreeing to the fact that, okay, hey, you were close to the answer, or yeah, you did it in the right manner. So he should feel that satisfaction from the time that he's spending on you and the time he's spending with you to solve a particular case. So that level of collaboration is something that you have to really showcase. Do not sit and argue with the interviewer even if you do not align. At least you can present your opinion, but do not be very rigid. Be very flexible. So the idea is actually to figure out that, okay, the interviewer seems to be satisfied in the way you have progressed. So that is the whole objective that we should try and achieve through our technical rounds. So obviously there are a lot more, some of the do's and some of the don'ts that we should really follow when we think of technical interviews. Do's, be very well prepared. Go through your resume, go through your related concepts, go back to your research, go back to the industries that you've worked for. Have that particular research set mind in your framework. Like, do not just go blank. Keep those kinds of thought very well, clear in your mind when you go, and be prepared for the interview. Second, listen carefully. A lot of them are more communication related gaps that we face in a technical interview. More so now because we are not giving face to face interviews. We are sitting in two different places. Sometimes network is an issue. Sometimes the way the person is speaking, it takes some while to capture and understand the accent if the person is out of the country or otherwise. Explain your thought process. Like I don't think I can emphasize much on this post our last slide. Obviously, talk to the interviewer, express your thoughts, express your opinions, be very flexible, but do express your opinions. Do not refrain from expressing what you think just because you think that, okay, he may not like it, or he may feel that, okay, I am not a right person. Remove that fear, talk more expressively, more intuitively. It would really work well for you. And finally, ask questions. Don't be afraid of seeking clarifications. Don't be afraid of seeking and getting your assumptions validated. Sometimes, while I've seen that particular do, I also remember that often interviewers say that, okay, you take 5 minutes, solve the case, come back with an answer, and then we'll discuss. and you would be thinking in your mind that, okay, I'm taking some XYZ assumptions, but I'm not talking to the interviewer, and he may not validate, he may not assess. So I would say, even if you are faced with a disclaimer saying that, hey, I am given 5 minutes and only post that we're gonna talk, at least be a little more louder with your thought process. Do not look up to him for a solution. Do not look up to him for a response, but at least convey, that see, I have been thinking about an urban and rural kind of population. This is a normal percentage groupism that I look for, because I think I've read somewhere in the past, because this is how my GDP is working, or something like that. Even if you're talking to yourself, he's a passive listener to what you're saying. So in that case, just be a little more louder with the thought processes that you're running in your mind, so that he becomes, engaged automatically. And sometimes, interviews get forced to ask questions while like in between. So they are there to break that silence. So which gives you an opportunity to go back and ask questions. So I mean, that's a cool way of, driving your interviews. But there are a couple of don'ts that you should really not touch upon. Don't bluff. It's very okay to say, I do not know. I will come back to you later. I'll definitely check on this and come back and be prepared. But do not talk about something that you do not know at all. Don't be too casual. Don't turn very informal. Some just because you share similar kind of interest. There are possibilities that you share similar kind of interests which are more informal in nature. But don't be very casual. At least maintain that professional behavior, professional personality while you are in the interview room. You may want to have an informal bond outside the interview room, but as long as you are in the interview room, ensure that you are professional. Do not rush to conclusions. Take your time to build the answer, to answer the questions. It's okay to take 5 seconds break before you kind of go back and answer the question being asked. Do not just jump over the question right there and then. Don't be too negative. I think I have also highlighted this point in my behavior interview rounds, that do not talk about bad things that have happened to you. At least leave the interview with a positive side about you. And even if there's a negative thing, they should know that you can turn that things around for the good. Now, next is talking about the different kinds of domains that I have seen normally, and how the interviews, technical rounds are being scored there. For example, in the finance related domain, a lot of case studies are there. Everybody is a number game and a number gamer. A lot of data analytics related exercises, questions, tasks, assignments sometimes. Sometimes those discussions happen in the interview itself. So be very, on tips with your numbers. Just do not bluff and, miss out on normal mathematical numbers. Very common and in banking and IB, all of these kinds of profiles, that you always have a good 1 hour Q&A back to back, grilling and stress sessions around the relevant topics and the concepts that are related to the job profile. So ensure that you thoroughly revise them before you enter a finance interview. For banking, a lot more case studies are data driven, but fintechs are also looking for, aptitude test. Somewhere they're also looking for coding test, despite that you do not need a coder. You end up not coding those questions later on, but they want to ensure that you are well versed with those kinds of languages that they need at their disposal. Often banking and fintechs, they are a lot more data driven, and they have a huge amount of data which somehow is not being able to easily manage to Excel. So they want to ensure that you learn different kinds of programming languages that they normally use to fetch out and talk about the data more often. So hence these are the new things that have come up in the market. For consulting, it's a very straightforward three-level round. First is guess estimates, where you have like back-to-back scenarios and numbers to talk about. Second, there are case rounds where you're given business cases from different and random industries, and you are there to solve them for them. And finally, there's always a concept Q&A, which is more about the technical round of your past work, how you have behaved, how do you think about strategy, how do you think about different industries, to more figure out which kind of industry you're interested in and what kind of concepts you are very well versed with. Marketing, a lot of group discussions I've seen happening in marketing. A couple of people are also given sales tasks and they have scenario based on their marketing a real business problem in terms of segmentation or target or what kind of audience I should talk about, how should I launch my product, and all of that. A lot of product pricing related problems you get to solve there. Not very often you use your theory and the things that you have read in the classes put to use, but you'd look more about around you in terms of what other companies are doing, what other competitor people are doing, and talk more about those things to make it more lively, to showcase that you are well informed. You track these kinds of market campaigns, you understand marketing campaigns quite easily and nicely, and it also gives you a very well informed attire and a posture to the interviewer. Product management and COS is the chief of staff roles. These are some two new pick and additions into the corporate era from almost like 2 to 3 years now. Product management people, they are their middlemen technically for business and the rest of the marketing teams. So they have to align with all of these kinds of people. So collaboration should be very handy and a lot of collaborative tasks could be there for you. And finally, it's more like a question and answer about your concepts, about the business things that you know, about the business product that you are forwarding into, and a bit more about product. While chief of staff role is a clearly managerial position where you need to interact with a lot of people, so collaboration, cohesiveness, quickness, timeliness, capacity to understand different multiple domains all at once, ability to manage your projects well. So a lot of these kinds of things are being checked upon in a COS interview rounds. You may be given a couple of assignments around that. You may be asked to figure out some business question and answer and business problems to solve. Sometimes there's also a team fitment test that people do in terms of um, like you are getting interviewed from different team heads. So instead of no matter you respond to one head, the other four people from different domains are also interviewing you so that they can also figure out okay how well versed you are with their kind of concepts and how good you think you'll be able to work with them. So a lot of these kinds of stuff has started happening for chief of staff roles. No matter they come up with a lot of more power and responsibility, but they are really big managerial positions because you are not running a particular project, you are technically running everything that is running inside an organization. So these are the ways that normally an interviewer tries and assesses you in each of these domains. And here, I think I open for questions on technical interviews. I think while people are responding and thinking and processing the information that we have spoken so far, and while you guys are in process of putting down your questions in the chat section, let me just run over to the last additional portion of what are the new kind of questions that you can ask the interviewer apart from on daily stuff. So these are the three, four questions that I've figured out that okay, they are more easy to understand and they also give you a little more insight about the interviewer, about the team that you're going to be working with, about the organization. One is understanding what are the day-to-day responsibilities of the position that you're applying for. So that gives you an insight on how your day, going to be looking like. Second could be some biggest challenges that the company is facing right now. What kind of projects there are there, and how do you think your position will be able to contribute? This shows your eagerness to learn, your quickness to adapt. And when you ask these kinds of challenges, it gives you a little more insight on what kind of work as an organization people are targeting, what kind of work is gonna coming your way, so that in case you feel that okay you are less prepared, you can prepare yourself a little more better before joining the organization if at all that happens. How does company support the professional development? we all are very much inclined to the growth and the learning associated with us, in the position that we're applying for, in the organization that we're working with the people that we're working with, and all of that. So this question kind of helps you assess, okay, how does company really help me? What are the skills that you need to own more to make it a right fit for the kind of role that you're applying for? Are there any prerequisites for the role that you're applying for? So that is something that you can assess with these kinds of questions. Last and often when you say is what is the management style, what kind of people work in, like is it flexible, it is fixed, people prefer working from home, people prefer working from office. Um what uh, it, it helps you understand the working dynamics, that okay, are we a lot more meeting driven, are we a lot more call driven, what kind of management style is working around for the organization, for the position, for the team that you're working for. It helps you prepare yourself a little more mentally better before you get in and start working with them, because you know what they work, you know how they respond, so you can prepare yourself accordingly. So these are some different questions apart from the usual ones that we normally ask the interviewer, and they can at least give you a little more better insight about the organization, about the position, about the company, sometimes about the hiring managers, because usually I think one technical round is definitely taken by key hiring manager, the team lead, who's going to be working with you. So having an opinion from those kind of people is like a very, you know, better way or a very good way of pre-starting and getting pre-prepared for any role that you pick. Um, I think that is all, and I open the house for questions. How to answer the question? Why do you choose software career while your graduation is not anyway doesn't relate to software? So in that case, in these kinds of questions where you think that your work profile is not related to the kind of education, the kind of stuff you have learned in the past, one way is to turn around to your project section so that you show your latent interest in these kinds of skills. That's a very good way to turn around, saying that, hey, I have been working on this. It's just that I've not got an opportunity to really showcase and put those skills to use on a corporate front. But I think now is the right time and I have got the right place to work, and these kinds of answers can help. And otherwise, I would say that sometimes if you are very off your domain and you are applying to a place which is completely very off the profile that you have built for yourself, prefer doing some certification courses or something like these things, which at least show an interest um, to the interviewer that okay, hey, you are genuinely inclined. So you might want to do all of those stuff to show that inclination that you might want to build for the interviewer, which makes it easy to answer these kinds of questions further. What should we include in your introduction? A usual way to introduce yourself or tell me about yourself and answer that kind of a question is more like a 5-pointer game. Leave the person with your name and location. Leave the person with the latest education that you have done. Brief about your work experience, the industries, the domains that you have more worked with, and then also close the question with leaving a bit about your hobbies, about how do you spend your time, or what is the activity that keeps you busy apart from work. So a little more informal line to go with. These are the 5 pointers which help you answer this question more or less within 2 minutes, and also giving sufficient information to the interviewer to start the interview.